Jess and Kyle were always up for an adventure. They had been best friends since childhood, their bond forged through countless escapades and shared secrets. Whether it was exploring abandoned buildings, diving into hidden caves, or trekking through uncharted territories, they thrived on the thrill of the unknown. Their latest thrill was a hike through Black Creek Woods, a dense forest that loomed just outside the small town of Ashford. The forest was notorious for its eerie atmosphere and the unsettling stories that surrounded it. Despite the ominous reputation, Jess and Kyle were undeterred, eager to uncover the mysteries that lay within. The locals told stories, dark ones, about an ancient tribe that still roamed the woods, performing bloodletting rituals under the moon. These tales were passed down through generations, each more chilling than the last. Some spoke of ghostly apparitions, others of strange symbols carved into the trees, and a few even mentioned the eerie sounds of drums echoing through the night. Most people steered clear, but Jess and Kyle laughed off the warnings. They had heard similar stories before and had always come out unscathed. To them, the forest was just another adventure waiting to be conquered. They had come to the forest to search for precious stones rumoured to be hidden in the hills, undeterred by the whispers of ghostly figures and lost travellers. The promise of treasure was too enticing to resist, and they were determined to find it, no matter the cost. The air was cool, thick with the smell of damp earth and rotting leaves. Every step they took seemed to stir up the rich, earthy scent, mingling with the faint aroma of pine and moss. It was a sensory overload, but one that only heightened their excitement. Tall pines and oaks stretched high above them, their branches weaving together like a tangled web that shut out much of the light. The canopy was so dense that only slivers of sunlight managed to pierce through, casting eerie shadows on the forest floor. As they ventured deeper, the trees grew closer, their trunks gnarled and twisted, almost as if they were guarding something. The forest seemed to close in around them, the path becoming narrower and more treacherous with each step. Shadows stretched across the ground, long and ominous, even though the sun was still visible through the cracks in the canopy. The interplay of light and dark created an unsettling atmosphere, as if the forest itself and watching their every move. Hours passed and they found nothing. The precious stones they had hoped to find remained elusive, hidden somewhere within the vast expanse of the forest. Their initial excitement began to wane, replaced by a growing sense of frustration. The deeper they went, the more the woods seemed to tighten around them. The trees grew thicker, their branches intertwining like the bars of a cage. It was as if the forest was trying to trap them, to keep them from leaving. Jess checked her watch. It had stopped. The hands were frozen in place, refusing to move. It was a small bell, one that added to the growing sense of unease. The air smelled different now, heavy and metallic like iron. It was a sharp, acrid scent that seemed out of place in the forest. Jess and Kyle exchanged worried glances, their earlier bravado beginning to waver. They should have been heading back by now, but the trail seemed to shift under their feet. No matter which direction they turned, the path they had followed was gone. It was as if the forest was playing tricks on them, leading them deeper into its heart. "Do you hear that?" Kyle whispered suddenly, his voice barely audible over the growing tension. His eyes darted around, searching for the source of the sound. At first, Jess thought it was just the wind, but then she heard it too. Faint, guttural whispers carried on the breeze. It was a low, almost inaudible murmur that seemed to come from all directions at once. It wasn't in English, nor in any language she could recognize. The words were strange, almost otherworldly, and they sent a chill down her spine. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but her feet felt rooted to the spot. The light was fading faster than it should have, and an eerie quiet settled over the woods. The once vibrant forest seemed to grow darker and more foreboding with each passing moment. Then came the first sound of movement, heavy footsteps crashing through the underbrush. It was a deliberate, almost menacing sound that sent a jolt of fear through them. Kyle's eyes widened as he turned toward the noise. "We need to move!" His voice was urgent, filled with a fear that mirrored Jess's own. They broke into a run, stumbling over roots and rocks, their breath coming in ragged gasps. The forest seemed to close in around them, the trees becoming a blur as they fled. The whispers grew louder, now accompanied by the unmistakable sounds of chanting. It was a rhythmic, almost hypnotic sound that seemed to pulse through the air. And then, as if summoned by some ancient force, the night came down all at once, plunging them into darkness. The transition was so sudden that it left them disoriented, their eyes struggling to adjust. Behind them the sounds grew more frenzied, crashing branches, the unmistakable thud of heavy weapons hitting the earth, and deep, throaty grunts. It was a cacophony of noise that seemed to close in around them. Jess felt a surge of panic as they sprinted blindly through the woods, branches whipping at their faces. The forest seemed to come alive, the trees reaching out to grab them. Just as Jess thought they couldn't outrun whatever was chasing them, the trees suddenly thinned, and they broke free into an open field, gasping for breath. The sudden openness was a stark contrast to the claustrophobic forest, and it felt like a lifeline. They collapsed onto the ground, their hearts pounding in their ears. The adrenaline was still coursing through their veins, making it hard to think clearly. But Kyle wasn't with her. Jess's heart skipped a beat as she looked around frantically, her mind racing with possibilities. The search parties never found him, and Jess returned to town, a hollow version of herself, haunted by the whispers and the unseen figures that had hunted them through the night. The loss of her best friend was a wound that would never heal, a constant reminder of the horrors they had faced. The locals never spoke of it, but they didn't have to. Everyone knew what had happened. The story of Jess and Kyle became another dark legend, whispered in hushed tones by those who dared to remember. Have you ever found yourself hopelessly lost in the woods? Beware, stay vigilant, because there are terrifying ancient tribe peoples in the woods that few have ever seen and lived to talk about. The warning was clear, a stark reminder of the dangers that lurked in the shadows. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe and follow us for more. Join us on TikTok and YouTube for more bone-chilling chronicles, if you dare.